So the main purpose is really to share content, knowledge about an important topic that is mental health and how workers can really position CCS solutions to leverage your value proposition in your markets and better support your clients in challenging times. At the end of this webinar, we will be also mentioning a survey, an important survey that we'll be carrying with CCS and whose results will be shared in Porto Forum. So thank you in advance for your participation, and I will leave the floor to Alexandru and Birger.
Well, thank you, Melody. So this is Birger speaking, starting with Alexandru. First of all, as well, to everybody, thank you for everybody joining this webinar on workplace mental well-being as a broker advantage. So actually, yes, we are holding that webinar, but it's actually about you, brokers, employee benefit managers, etc., to learn hopefully from us, from our experience, and maybe afterwards as well, we're learning from you as well by getting feedback. And actually, Melody mentioned already that we are planning a survey for you afterwards, and I will tell you a little bit more about that later. A very important thing that I don't want to forget, and that's why I highlighted it here on my notes as well, is I thank you, BrokersLink, not only for organizing this, but for these very exciting past months. We joined a few months ago. We had tremendous experience, not only with the BrokersLink organization, but with some of the members already in different countries, Poland, Romania, etc., which are ongoing. So thank you for this. We are also happy to contribute to the pretty exciting employee benefits section, which you're having, and being one of the affiliates helping here is really a pleasure. We will be in Portugal, so if we are missing something out today, feel free to ask the colleagues who are joining the Porto conference. Very important and very exciting. We are holding your time here. We know your time is very precious. So we want to reward you a little bit about this, and we want you to reward you with something meaningful. We will grant every participant of this webinar and who's at the same time filling out our survey, 5 minutes of your time, credits. And with those credits, you can reach out to us and can claim a well-being webinar from us. A 1 hour, 40 minutes to 1 hour webinar on specific topics. We'll give you the details later. You can give them to your employees, to your colleagues. You can give them to your clients. We'll tell you later. Now, corporate counseling services. We are a leading provider of mental health services, employee assistance. We support organizations, corporates mainly, with confidential and high quality counseling and other well-being services. For me, myself, I'm the sales director. As mentioned already, I've been in the health insurance, travel insurance industry for years now, and I'm together with the rest of the management team leading the business development of CCS. And by the way, addressing organizations like you as brokers is part of what we want to do. We know that you are important. You're sitting in front of the clients. You can tell us things that they need. So that's me. Alexandru is here as well. Alex, up to you. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, a great big welcome from me as well. My name is Alexandru Mănescu, Alex for short. I'm a clinical psychologist and a cognitive behavioral therapist by trade, but I have been in the lovely world of workplace mental health for about 20 years now. And for the last 15, I am CCS's clinical director. And in my capacity, serving a dual role, on one side, leading our clinical governance and our clinical quality assurance across the multiple territories that we cover, but in the other capacity, working with many companies in their journeys towards workplace mental health. And I'm here to assist Birger with more information about the clinical components of the product and how they're measured, and any other clinically related questions.
Good. Nadia, if you could move to the next slide. Well, again, it's about you, right? So we hope actually to deliver something to you that make you that empowers you with that topic in front of your clients. We want you to become a stronger partner to your clients, your existing clients, maybe your future clients. Last but not least, obviously, we want you to maybe increase your revenue streams. Let's name it. That's why we're all here as well. You as organizations, you are in your regions, you are already leaders. You're leading topics. Let us help you become a leader as well in this important wellness and mental health topic, and become a trusted advisor to your clients. And we are at your side actually to do that. And Nadia, I think that's basically the essence of today. If you could move to the next one, would be amazing. Some of you may have heard about CCS. We've been announced in Agora. You may have looked at our website, but very briefly, we are not new to this. We are not a startup. We've been there for nearly 4 decades. Not me personally, but the organization. And we have actually been one of the pioneers in the industry in Europe, developing this. We're today in 50 countries plus countries, right? Have in our network 3,000 professionals and do serve 2 million lives around the globe. So this just as a message, we know what we do. We have seen things developing. We are one of the recognized leaders in the industry. And what we do actually, we provide a number of services, products, as you want to call it. The key product is obviously employee assistance, EAP, how we call it. This is actually a product where we support your employees who might find themselves in a difficult situation, should it be stress, family issues, etc., that impacts them in their well-being, maybe in their productivity, and may lead to situations where they just can't find out. We do support managers more and more. Managers are operating in challenging environments. So we have specific programs towards them. And last but not least, the word of today, well, you know what's happening in North America, etc. So there's things happening which impact organizations and people. And so we help these organizations deal with critical incidents. Very, very important, and that really sets us apart when you look at the employee assistance landscape, is the clinical excellence. Alexandra is going to talk about this, but it's really about making things not only nice, but right. And to make sure that the outcome is measurable and valid for your employees and your organization. The global delivery is more and more important today. Although we are all specialists in our regions, we have multilingual, multicultural workforces we have to deal with. We have other entities around the world who may have similar standards. 24/7 is obviously something that is expected today, and whatever is delivered should be consistent over borders. So what is delivered actually in, I don't know, in Romania should be, at least from a structural perspective, similar to what is in Portugal. And that's for CCS. I think the next slide is again for Alexandro, who will drive you a little bit more into reality. Here we go.
Right. So thanks so much for that introduction and for presenting a little bit of where CCS is and where CCS comes from in this landscape of mental health. Now, I'm a clinician, so I can talk on and on and on and hours about the benefits of mental health and mental health in the workplace. I'm not going to do that today. But I would like to highlight some facts first and foremost about how the world is shifting and how the workplace mental health world is shifting. COVID-19, the pandemic, has created a change in the narrative about mental health in the workplace. And right now, it's no longer an HR nice to have. And more companies are coming to the realization that it should be central to business continuity and performance. the awareness of the facts that, for instance, things like absenteeism, presenteeism, turnover, disability, are all driven in large by unmanaged mental health and co-occurring behavioral health conditions, is becoming a fact that many employers around the world are starting to grasp. Obviously, all of this creates costs that show up obviously in the profit and loss balance through reduced productivity, higher recruitment and training expenses, increased medical and short and long-term disability claims, and so on. The pandemic thus has changed both the prevalence, but also the expectations of employees and employers from these types of services. We are now seeing more and more people, for instance, that are more comfortable to come up and request support for their anxiety, their depression, substance use, burnout, and so on. But with that comes also a shift in an expectation from benefits buyers, from employees. They want timely service delivery, clinically credible products, and obviously convenient care. So it's not only just about the clinical component, it should always be accompanied by an experience and the journey within the product, within the service that is very convenient and comfortable. We're now seeing more and more employers and companies demanding outcomes data, integrated care pathways, services that reduce escalation to higher cost medical and disability channels, and so on and so forth. For us at CCS, that's music to our ears. That is something that we have been thriving for years. That is something that we have always had in our DNA. Clinical effectiveness is our operating word. But now it is becoming more and more obvious for the rest of the world that for mental health providers such as us, but also for brokers that can put up their products that meet this ever increasing demand, they are in a position of putting a highly differentiated product through a clinically rigorous EAP, for instance, as part of a total well-being strategy, thus meeting all of these quality, accessibility, and measurable impact demands. So we are in a time where mental health is in the forefront, but that comes with high expectations. And I personally am very happy that that's the case. As I said, I've been in this industry for 20 years, and we've never seen, as the industry and the mental health world in general is now calling it the golden age of mental health. Before moving into what the journey looks like, I would like to just briefly address some common misconceptions that exist about mental health in the workplace and the EAPs in general. First and foremost, it is sometimes regarded as something highly medical or to be used for high prevalence of mental disorders. That is very false. A high quality EAP covers a very wide array of psycho-emotional issues. Indeed, from all the diagnosable situations such as affective disorders, meaning depression or anxiety disorders, but going all through to burnout, stress, conflict resolution in the workplace, parenting issues, couples issues, and so on. So the entire spectrum of psychological and relational issues that can impact one's personal or professional life and overall performance is covered by a robust EAP. The second one is that EAPs don't produce measurable ROIs. Again, that is not true. When you look at utilization trends, symptoms reductions, reduced medical spends, and so on, if the right clinical model is there and if the EAP is designed in that direction, we actually have a lot of tools that we put in place in order to showcase impact and in order to showcase the return on investment of such products. And industry standards usually speak about an average of $6 gain for every $1 invested in a mental health program. But I can tell you from experience that some really well done and really robust and properly implemented workplace mental health products go even above that. Another one is that it is visible, that mental health is visible. Again, that is incorrect in the sense that mental health actually, on the contrary, are usually very difficult to detect. And usually people try to hide their struggles due to stigma, societal pressures, and so on. And the latest studies coming from the World Health Organization does show that 1 in 5 people struggle with mental health issues that are not visible to people around them. Right. So it's very risky to make the assumption that I just need to look at my work population and see if there's a need for such products, or see if they're struggling, and base my decision of opting for such things based on looking at them, or having a glance over my population. It's usually very hidden. In many cases, there are signals that specialists can detect, but obviously for the untrained eye, they remained undetected. And last but not least, sometimes there's a misconception that such products are expensive. Now, sure enough, cost is of course subjective, but in reality, in the philosophy of corporate expenditure, EAPs in general and workplace mental health services are definitely on the bottom end of pricing. So they were never a pillar of cost that is in the biggest top spenders of top categories of expenses for corporates. So that would be kind of the misconceptions that we've been facing in these last 20 years in interacting with companies. And now Berger has been talking about highly clinical and qualitative service delivery. I would like to just talk about 4 elements that I feel are very important for an EAP and in general for a workplace mental health product to be in place in order to reach higher standards of quality of delivery. The first one would be the evidence-based models and modalities used. Mental health is an industry that has a lot of modalities, that has a lot of procedures, a lot of specializations. So for EAPs to be effective, they have to rely on clinical models and clinical methodologies that are evidence-based but relevant for the scope of such EAPs. I'm not going to go into specifics right now. I talk briefly about them later on, but modality, model, and clinical pathway are really relevant for a highly clinical EAP. Integrated care pathways. An EAP cannot live alone. An EAP and an EAP product is the bridge, is the gateway to workplace mental health, but it also needs to be linked to whatever other benefits, whatever other insurance packages, and also whatever is outside in the local context of a beneficiary. So we can make use of all of that and gatekeep the mental health provision from the moment it reaches us all through to full treatment, even if in certain cases it is beyond our scope to do the entire process. We need to ensure linkage. Measurement and oversight, that is also a very important component into a highly clinically qualitative EAP. As said in the beginning, we measure our impact, we measure our results, we have to make proof of that from multiple aspects, from clinical KPI to efficacy KPI, satisfaction indicators, and so on, but also to have clinical oversight. There are models of EAP out there that sometimes make use of networks of affiliates and vendors. They take on a case, transfer it to a vendor, and pretty much that is the experience. In our modality, that is never the case. The process has continuous oversight from the moment someone reaches us all through to completion and even beyond service through follow-ups and so on, which I'm going to talk briefly a little bit later. So clinical oversight through every aspect of the process and at every point is mandatory to achieve clinical effectiveness. And last but not least, culturally appropriate deliveries. In mental health, you cannot have a centralized hub sitting somewhere that delivers counseling or support across different territories. that just doesn't work. You need to provide the service localized through specialists that are trained within the culture of the beneficiary in order to maximize on the bond and on the interaction between beneficiary and therapist that are linked through a joint culture and thus being highly effective in their intervention. So cultural sensitivity and cultural relevance is very important when delivering high clinical EAPs, especially in global settings or in multinational settings, where you must ensure that methodology and clinical standards are uniform, but delivery is localized and in the hands of mental health experts that are locally there in the countries of delivery. Now, on top of the clinical aspects that we need to look at, as I said in the beginning, there must also be a premium client journey or a premium client experience when accessing and going through a clinical product. The first and foremost is the fast and multi-language access, meaning that we are providing multiple channels through which people can reach us. There's the ever popular and still very popular 24/7 toll-free line through which people call on us to get in contact with our counselors, and that is still a key driver of users to our program. But on top of that, we have web-based access, we have chat access, and also scheduler access. So giving people more and more ways to reach out to us is very important. Also language. One might be very fluent in English. I'm a Romanian. I think I speak a fairly well level of English, but I would still seek counseling in Romanian because that is my language of heart and that is my language of choice. That's the language I think in and I feel in. So I would still need access in my language in order to get a highly clinically effective and comfortable experience. A second component of a premium client journey is flexible delivery, in the sense that in-person delivery has been the norm for many years. That is losing popularity. In-person meaning face-to-face in the office of a counselor. That is still available, and we're still providing that in all the major cities that we cover, but that is losing popularity, and people are looking, especially after COVID, they're looking at other methods of receiving treatment and care, online, telephonic, and so on. So giving them these options to receive support through other channels is very important. A third one, which I find extremely important, is direct to clinical, meaning that there is no middleman, there is no intermediation, there is no junior professional doing a first level of triage. It is people calling in and accessing directly mental health specialists. And that is, in my opinion, the biggest driver of people wanting to access us. It is as simple as calling a 24/7 at any point, at any time, calling a number or chatting on an application and getting in touch with a master's level clinician that is there to assist with the problem. And we've done internal results, for instance, during the pandemic. We've looked at panic attacks. We had a huge prevalence of panic attacks during the pandemic. And we have seen that working with a panic attack as a hot case, as we call it, so dealing with someone that's going through a panic attack at the time of the call, and for a clinician to work with them through managing that panic attack as it was progressing, is 3 times more effective than scheduling someone for a later date to work on their panic attacks at cold, meaning remembering and presenting what they went through and working with a clinician on that. Even more interesting is that it has decreased by about 65% the number of additional sessions and support that they need after that hot intervention that they got if they called on us as they were progressing through the panic attack, because the coping mechanisms are differently triggered and activated in the process, and I don't want to go into the clinical component of all of this. But this direct to clinical, it is highly important and highly effective for this journey, and also follow-ups. We at CCS consider that our duty of care does not end at the last session of support provided, but it goes beyond that in making sure that our recommendations, our referrals, our linkage to specialized care was satisfactory for the beneficiaries and was indeed something at par to what they were expecting from a comfortable position and from a clinical position. So these would be kind of my general ideas about what are the makings of a qualitative and comfortable and premium level of mental health support under an EAP. I would like to move forward a little bit just to go through the what it looks like as a journey for an EAP, how it looks and feels for a beneficiary. So we start with the first contact, as I said, and people can access that through multiple channels. Phone, online, employer pathway can be different ways, can be portals within corporate, internal applications, intranets, and so on. So we're very flexible on adding new methodologies for more and more people to reach us. And at that point, there, as I said, in contact with the clinician and with the mental health specialist that starts to work with the person, first identifying, sure, explaining the confidentiality, which is the key process also for us, but also for reassuring the customer that they're in the right hands and that it remains within him or her or they and the specialist, and then moves further into assessing what the problem is, collecting initial data, doing clinical triage, understanding whether it's a low risk, moderate risk, high risk, because that's very important in deciding what the next steps are, documenting safety planning, and so on. So there is an entire assessment phase where one person's problem is explored. They are assisted in prioritizing their issues that might have, so that at this level we can guide the person into what's the best treatment and care plan for them that has the most impact within the limited number of sessions or the limited scope that we can do. Another benefit of having direct to clinical is that we can do even on-the-spot counseling session as needed. There are cases that from a clinical perspective or from a beneficiary request, they would like to get their first support session then and there. They might be struggling with something that they want to discuss then, more than just go through an assessment and an identification of the problem, but actually get their first counseling session on the spot. And that we do, and we do quite a lot lately. So more and more people like to have their counseling session at this moment of the first contact, and actually start working on their problem or their issue from the get-go. Now, once this initial part, this first contact and assessment has happened during the first interaction with the program, there is an allocation of the case towards counselor or a specialist that further continues to work with that person for a number of sessions. Now, these numbers of sessions can be, they are commercially dictated, right? So they are aligned upon with the customer. It can be one session only, but it can be 3 sessions, 5 sessions, 7 sessions, depending on what the commercial contract looks like. But what's important to know is that CCS has developed within the clinical department its proprietary clinical methodology called the One Path that ensures that no matter how many sessions one person has, even if it's just a 1 or 3 sessions, our clinical methodology, rooted and grounding into cognitive behavioral therapy, single session counseling, psychological first aid, enhanced CBT, and so on, is still very relevant and still has a level of measurable impact for the person reaching us. And that is, again, part of that the DNA of our EAP, that is clinical first, clinical excellence, and clinical expertise, whatever the problem of the person might be, and however many sessions we can do within our limited scope. Now, sure enough, many users benefit from this intervention, and that is sufficient to address their primary concern, but others might have needs that exceed our short-term interventions or our limited scope as an EAP. So at that point, our care navigators, our case manager, and our clinicians coordinate for next steps, referral to specialty providers, psychiatry access, community support programs, and so on, to ensure continuity outside of the program. So effective navigation of this even long-term needs, plus referral to validated, pre-validated, and pre-assessed sources also greatly work towards a clinically effective, a clinically impactful result, right? Is one thing for a person to start looking for a psychiatrist or for a therapist in the vast world of mental health specialists, and is another thing to go through a structured channel and get a proper assessment, get immediate support, and if that's not enough, to go towards validated and linked to specialists that have been pre-assessed by us, that have the qualification and the specialization to effectively treat and work with one's problem. Sorry.
Lot of reactions, Alex, in the background.
Yeah, sure. And last but not least, and with this, I'm finishing my slide. Obviously, there is a closure moment. That's the point when we measure our outcomes at the end of the intervention. We are assessing the symptoms and the clinical tableau with the same tools that we have done in the past. So they remain, we remain relevant in a pre and post intervention, and understanding what the impact has been for the person. We obviously have follow-up protocols in place that ensure relapse prevention. We make follow-ups with our customers to see, are they feeling better? Are our recommendations working for them? Understanding how the symptoms are presenting at later stages after intervention. So there is an entire follow-up and relapse prevention methodology in place. We can only consider that a case has been closed once many boxes of clinical duty of care have been checked. And in the end, all the metrics that we have collected are reported and documented in a confidential, always aggregated statistical format, and that is shared with employers or with US brokers to understand engagement KPIs, clinical outcomes and improvements, escalation frequencies, utilization rates and patterns, and so on. So thus showcasing both the service efficiency and the clinical impact, but also helps companies to inform their overall well-being strategies and ongoing employee benefits, and whatever else they might need. So it's also at the end a strategic tool that can inform and help further well-being strategies within the company. So as you can see, as a conclusion, the entire process that we have put together in many, many years of service delivery, from first access to post-program care, is designed to be highly effective, both from a clinical and mental health perspective for the employee, but also for companies who can receive such metrics and data showcasing their ROI, their impact of the program, and can make a lot of good use with such data, understanding how the program greatly impacts their people and their companies. That was about it from my end.
Nadia, I just take over. Conscious of time, I'm speeding up a little bit, but as you heard from Alex, it is a topic that is taken very serious, and it has some complications, etc. So, but I reassure you, when in your client conversations, we are happy to jump in and assist you with that. Now, very briefly, you as a broker, as a benefit specialist, what are the topics actually to drive a conversation with your client? And I think it's benefit driven, right? So why should a client or corporate talk about this? Well, it strengthens their employee value proposition, right? That's the first thing. We care. Alex mentioned that these things can be measured. We may reduce, or mental health programs may reduce turnover, absenteeism, presenteeism. All this can be put in numbers, and is definitely something a CFO, an insurance buyer, and HR is always interested in. And last but not least, a bit more complex, but definitely not complex, but not always obvious, is prevention and intervention is key, right? I think an organization that invests in these kind of things early will not find themselves in an absenteeism problem or something like that. So there's a lot of benefits here, and which we've put some here on the slides, but there's supporting documents on Agora which you can use. Very briefly on duty of care. Yes, the organization has a duty of care towards their employees, but there's a few things that your client needs to look at when choosing an EAP provider, which is it GDPR compliant? Do they maintain standards? Where is the data stored? How is it stored? Who's looking at it, etc. Last but not least, we all want together to reduce costs for the employer, for the payer, the insurance company. That's probably one of the things as well that where you stand as a broker. Strong utilization doesn't mean that we want a lot of mental health issues to happen, but we want it to be utilized in a way that drives value, and we don't want people to wait for results. And last but not least, every outcome needs to be monitored. In this slide, I don't read it through. There's an FAQ session. There is an FAQ document as well in Agora. I will point you off that. And for the sake of time, again, and by respect for everybody's work, Nadia, if you don't mind, I would like to go to the next one. Well, we are an affiliate of CCS, of Brokers Link, so we are easy to find. Go on Agora, right? If you have a question, all our key managers and client managers are on Agora. If you have a question, ask Melody. Well, there was this organization, they were talking about mental health. I have this question now. Melody will for sure guide you very well. We have in the organization an account manager, especially for Brokers Link, the Brokers Link network, which is Brian Piper. Some of you may know him already. He's been around for decades as well. Not always with CCS, but we're very proud having him. He's actually your point forward for this. So the way actually it should work is if you have an opportunity, if you have a client conversation, well, tell us. Send us an email, reach out, speak with us, what is happening. We'll then together with you help you develop the right questions in order to scope the opportunity or the client problem. And together with you, provide you with proposals, see what budgets, timelines are there. Do they already have an experience, good experience, bad experience with mental health programs? And obviously throughout the process, because we value the fact that you actually maintain the client relationship, we are there. We jump in wherever you need us. If you need us more from a commercial perspective, it's going to be Brian or me or one of our team members in sales. If you need a more clinical approach, well, Alexandro has plenty of colleagues over there who speak plenty of languages, who was in these different countries where your client is. So we're happy to support you. And obviously, we'll drive you together with you from proposal to hopefully implementation through all the process. So we're easy to work with, we're easy to reach, and we know you have a lot of other things to do, so we help you. This is just a few screenshots about what has been uploaded this morning. Thank you, Melody, to Agora. Yes. Some documents that are there to help you, that you can distribute to your teams. However, doesn't mean that that's everything. If you still have a question, again, reach out, we'll help you through.
And so just to complement Birger, yes. So those documents are already available under the marketplace of Agora on the EB section. So it's already there. You can access, download, and it's very well presented, very short format, straightforward. So have a look, and if you have any questions, we are there with the CCS team to answer.
Good. Okay. So I think that's probably the last page, and I promised you at the beginning, you're going to be rewarded. Here we go. So you have attended this webinar. So everybody, each of you has already has gone halfway. If on top of that you're kind enough to answer the short survey that's going to be sent to you after this webinar, you will be entitled to a credit, and that credit enables you to seek for a webinar with one of our for webinar on one of the topics that you see on the button here on the right side, which you can then utilize either for your colleagues, your employees, and say, well, that's fantastic. I want to test it. I want to see how this happens. Or you can even utilize that for one of your clients. Say, hey, dear client, you know what? I have a credit from CCS and I offer it, I give it to you. We can do a webinar for you, for example, on addressing employee performance issues. We can do a stress management webinar for you. So this is actually our hopefully appreciated offer to you after this webinar in reward of your time and attention of today. By the way, there is a little I think the presentation would be sent to everybody, right, Melody? So there's a little QR code as well, just in case you want to know more. And that's basically it for the webinar and survey incentive. And that leads us right in time to the Q&A section.
Before we move to the Q&A session, I wanted to really draw your attention and encourage you to take part of this survey. It's important because we plan with CCS to share the results on Workers Link Europe Forum in Porto early March. It doesn't take a long time. It's quite quick. I've already answered myself to have a look and go through for the questions. It's really easy. So and on the other hand, it's really valuable for CCS then to share with all of you. So thank you for your participation to make this survey really concrete and valuable to all the network. And now we can go through the questions. And we already have a few. I don't know if you've seen already on the chat. We have one from Anne. So saying that EAP is actually and effectively interesting. Could you please share concrete anonymous cases of critical incidents which were rapidly solved? Examples are great to use for HR managers. So if you have any in mind, you want to that you can share.
There are many of such. That's a very interesting question, and there are many of them. And our clinical department is constantly working with these things. Now, it very much depends on what we understand through critical situations. But if we take out the at risk of suicidality cases, which we still have, and we do have, and we don't necessarily consider just those types of cases critical cases. We are talking about, and there are cases of people that are at very low performance level, that are basically incapacitated in performing their activities, either through to, let's say, the death of a loved one, or major issues happening in their personal life and so on, that reach us, that are usually hidden or not so visible in the workplace, but then they reach us, and through working with them in a couple of sessions, we unblock that situation so that they can return to their regular performance. We see very often managers or directors that are at level of burnout, and they are critical cases, and usually with managers and with leadership, their level of resilience and their level of dissimulating the problem, it's even higher than the rest. So we're seeing pretty much managers sometimes, or company leaders that seem to be, or at least in the workplace, they show as being functioning, but they're almost at the level of complete burnout, so intervening at that point and helping them to diffuse part of that pressure, managing all of that pressure is obviously essential. So there are many cases that we can look at that sometimes are not so visible in the workplace, but us on the back end, on the side of the mental health specialists that receive these cases. I will just give you an understanding. The vast majority of the cases that we get are moderate risk. And that's a really interesting statistic, right? The vast majority are not suicidal and high critical, but they're not on the very low end, a very small one kind of off situation. They're usually moderate. And detecting and receiving cases in the moderate area is highly essential and highly important because it prevents them from actually deteriorating into high risk cases that has really long recovery times and really long intervention times. I can give you an example. A depression caught at its onset can be solved within a couple of sessions. Let that depression devolve into a major depressive episode that you might be looking into 3 to 5 months of sick absence, right? So the stakes are very high when we're talking about mental health.
Another question. So this is from Trinity in Philippines. Trinity works with clients from various industries, with most coming from the shipping, manning agency, manufacturing, and BPO sectors. Given that each industry has unique mental health challenges, such as homesickness among seafarers and work-related stress in BPO employees, does CCS offer customized clinical approaches to tailor to the specific needs of each industry?
That is an absolutely brilliant question, and thank you so very much for that. Yes, that is the whole point of a very well-established clinical department. One of our biggest tasks is to do clinical governance. Even today, earlier, we had our weekly clinical team meeting, and we were looking at special needs of special populations or special needs of special products, and how do you adjust the clinical governance, and how do you make sure that the clinical modalities employed for particular populations are relevant and in tune with what they need, and how do you link them with mental health professionals that speak their language, or what methods of delivery are available, right? For instance, you can't expect people working as seafarers to see a counselor in their private office or to meet a psychiatrist in their private office. So you must make sure that they have access and ways that they can still get support, although they're somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean and so on. So yes, that is a really good question. And that is, in my opinion, that is where a clinically driven EAP shines the brightest, in having the capacity to adjust clinical methodologies for special mental health needs of a very diverse population.
Another one from Roman. Who usually is the best contact or best function at client companies for this topic? Is it the HR director, or should the workers contact upper up in the organization?
This is for sales. I think that's
Yeah.
one. It is multidisciplinary. Mental health is obviously all over the organization, but yes, obviously HR is always a good place to go to because they deal with people, which we do, right? So they probably can guide a broker, a benefit manager, really saying, this is what I know from my organization. I know that certain entities in my organization, departments, have specific problems. I know those are the ones who typically have these things on the table. So it's always a good point. Now, in a sales process, obviously there might be others involved, right? And obviously the CFO at some point, right? Because it's money, if there is no budget in the HR, but HR is always a good start, especially to have this conversation. Hey, by the way, how are you structured? Where do you see challenges? And the challenge could be, well, we are challenging attracting talents. Why? Well, because my industry is known to be stressful. Okay, let's talk about stress to help you attract clients. So the benefit of this kind of program extends to productivity, to employer branding, etc. So Roman, this is a good point. It's not the only one, but yeah, definitely.
I also have one question myself. Is normally EAP deployed at, let's say, group level, or can it be sized for a specific country or a specific activity of the client? If the client has many different activities, how tailored can it be?
Alex?
I can pick up on that. The answer is all of the above. In the sense that if there is a desire for a global EAP, that can be done. But again, keeping in mind that localized delivery is very important. So we can look at a global EAP across multiple territories while the delivery is still localized. If there is a desire to offer EAPs to particular, let's say, vulnerable populations within a particular company, that can also be done, thus customizing the EAP for the specific needs of that population. So the answer is, as long as the client works with us to understand where their need comes from, our clinical expertise of 40 years plus and so many specialists that we have on board can help tailor the EAP experience to meet those needs. We're in a multitude of options here, and we can come in front of all of them in dialogue with the customer in understanding where is the need coming from.
What we also have in order, because very often clients know there is an issue, but they don't really know how to address it. There is things in place in CCS as well, or assessment programs where we guide the clients through an assessment program where we can help the client, ask your employees through questionnaires, etc., which are then validated and then say, okay, we believe that your organization, as it's structured now, has a specific problem here, which we may address this way. So these are things that we can do. It is supposed to help an organization understand actually their need. A need needs to be quantified, a need needs to be justified. Is it a legal requirement as well? We didn't speak about that at all. In some countries, mental health in the workplace is definitely a legal thing. So am I compliant when investing in a certain company in a certain region? And these are things we can do, we can help with. So maybe this helps, Alexander, just to add to
that. Thank you.
3 minutes left.
Any other questions?
I would give another credit to the last question. It's my present now. One question and you get an extra credit.
Can be in writing on the chat or directly, depending on what you prefer. Well, anyway, if we don't have more questions, you now know who you should address your questions at CCS team. So I think we are just on time to close the webinar. To thank you again. Thank you to our speakers and to the whole CCS team that has been involved in preparing this first session together. Thank you to all the attendees, and looking forward to seeing you in the Porto Forum.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
So much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Thank you so much for joining.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.